In the 15th century, one of the largest cities on Earth began to empty out. Not because of one war, not because of one plague, because of water. The same water that made it the most powerful city in the medieval world became the thing that destroyed it. At its peak, this city was larger than medieval Paris. It fed hundreds of thousands of people. Its engineers moved rivers. Its kings claimed to be gods. And then the water stopped obeying them. This is the story of Angkor, and it should terrify every person living in a modern city right now. If you're new here, we cover the civilization's history forgot to warn us about. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Before we get to the collapse, you need to understand what was actually here. Because when most people hear ancient ruins, they picture a few broken columns in a field. Angkor was nothing like that. This was a functioning megacity, miles of canals, massive reservoirs, wooden markets, and stone temples rising out of the jungle like mountains built by human hands. The largest religious monument ever built on Earth. But the temples weren't the real achievement. The water was. The Khmer didn't just build beautiful things. They built a machine, a water machine. And for 500 years, that machine worked perfectly. Until it didn't. Southeast Asia in the early medieval period was one of the most connected places on Earth. Ships from India, China, Persia, and Arabia moved constantly through these waters, carrying silk, spices, gold, religious ideas, and political blueprints. And the Khmer didn't just absorb what arrived, they transformed it. They blended Hindu gods with local spirits. They fused Sanskrit kingship with Khmer ancestor traditions. They took everything the Indian Ocean world offered and made it entirely their own. For a long time, the Khmer world was fragmented, powerful but divided, a world waiting for one ruler strong enough to pull it together. In 802 CE, that ruler appeared. His name was Jayavarman II. On a sacred mountain called Kulen, he performed a ritual that changed everything, declaring himself a universal king, a god king, the sacred center of the universe, the bridge between heaven and earth. That idea sounds powerful, and it was, but it also created a trap that would take 600 years to spring. Because if the king is responsible for cosmic order, what happens when the rains stop coming? Here is what most people miss about Angkor. The temples were the symbol, but the water system was the engine. Cambodia's environment was both a gift and a nightmare. During the monsoon season, floods could overwhelm the entire landscape. During the dry season, water could vanish completely and crops would fail. If you wanted to survive here, you had to understand water. If you wanted to build an empire, you had to control it. And that is exactly what the Khmer did. They built massive reservoirs called barrays, some stretching over 8 kilometers long. They dug canals. They redirected rivers. They surrounded temples with moats large enough to look like inland seas. The West Barai, one of the most famous, was roughly 8 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide. That is not an irrigation project. That is a statement of power. What the Khmer built wasn't just infrastructure. It was the medieval world's most ambitious attempt to control nature itself. More water meant more rice. More rice meant more people. More people meant more labor. More labor meant bigger temples, larger armies, greater wealth. It was a feedback loop, and for centuries it made Angkor look unstoppable. But here's the problem with a system that's successful. The bigger it gets, the more it needs everything to keep working at once. The canals need maintenance. The reservoirs need clearing. The farmers need predictable rain. The governors need to stay loyal. The forests need protection. And the climate needs to cooperate. History does not do perfect. By the 12th century, the Khmer Empire was at the height of its power, and one king decided he wanted to build something that would outlast every empire that had ever existed. His name was Suryavarman II. He took power around 1113 CE, and what he built is almost impossible to describe. Angkor Wat. Calling it a temple feels like calling the ocean a puddle. It covers 162 hectares. Its central tower rises 65 meters, built to represent Mount Meru, the sacred mountain at the center of the Hindu cosmos. Its walls are carved with gods, demons, battles, heavens, and hells. But Angkor Wat wasn't just a religious statement, it was political propaganda carved in stone. It told every rival kingdom one thing: look at what we can build. Look at how much we command. Look at how close we are to the gods. Greater Angkor at its peak may have housed close to 1 million people in its wider region, one of the largest pre-industrial cities on Earth. But empires that large create systems that fragile, and Angkor now depended on constant water flow, constant loyalty, constant military strength, and constant belief that its kings were truly divine. Then in 1177, that confidence shattered. The Cham, a rival kingdom from what is now Vietnam, attacked by water and sacked the capital. The sacred city of the God Kings had been violated. Before I get into what happened next, drop a comment. Do you think what came after saved Angkor, or just delayed the inevitable? I'm genuinely curious. From that catastrophe came one of the most remarkable rulers in Southeast Asian history, Jayavarman VII. He wasn't young when he took power, possibly already in his 50s or 60s. He had watched his city burn. He came back with a fury that reshaped the entire region. He defeated the Cham. He restored Khmer dominance. And then, instead of just rebuilding what was lost, he reimagined the empire entirely. He turned toward Mahayana Buddhism, compassion, healing. The king not as conqueror, but as caretaker and protector of his people. He built Angkor Thom, the great city, surrounded by massive walls and gates covered in enormous stone faces, gazing calmly in every direction. At its center, the Bayon, towers covered in serene smiling faces that seem to watch over everything. Some scholars say those faces represent the bodhisattva of compassion. Others say they're the king himself. Maybe that was always the point. He also built hospitals across the empire, rest houses along major roads, and infrastructure on a scale that had never been attempted. But every hospital, every road, every temple required labor, resources, and maintenance. The empire became more impressive and more fragile at exactly the same time. After his death around 1218, maintaining that world became something no one could fully manage. The empire had survived invasion. The real question was whether it could survive itself. As I explain this, think about whether any of it sounds familiar to cities you know today. Tell me in the comments. After Jayavarman VII, Angkor entered a long, grinding decline. And here's what most people get wrong about how empires fall. There was no single night, no one dramatic moment, no fire from the sky. It was everything at once, slowly. Religion shifted. Theravada Buddhism replaced the old God-king ideology, changing how royal authority worked. The empire overextended. Distant regions stopped sending tribute. Local rulers gained independence. To the west, the Ayutthaya kingdom rose and grew aggressive, sacking Angkor multiple times. Trade routes shifted toward coastal cities, pulling wealth and power south toward Phnom Penh. All of that might have been survivable. The real killer was the water. Recent research shows that between the 14th and 15th centuries, Angkor faced a brutal 1-2 punch. First, major droughts. Years of weak monsoons dropped water levels across the entire system. Reservoirs shrank. Rice production faltered. Then, violent floods. When the rains returned, they came in catastrophic bursts. Overwhelming canals, breaking dikes, filling reservoirs with sediment that choked the whole network. Think about the nightmare of that. You're trying to repair a massive network of canals, reservoirs, and rice fields. While your food supply is failing, your enemies are attacking, your governors are ignoring you, and your people are quietly losing faith in everything the empire promised them. The hydraulic system that once fed hundreds of thousands had become a trap. Too massive to abandon, too complex to repair, too fragile to survive what the climate was doing to it. And people began leaving, not all at once, slowly, family by family, neighborhood by neighborhood, moving south toward Phnom Penh, toward water they could actually use, trade routes that actually worked, a world that made sense. Angkor lost its center, the wooden city vanished, and the jungle, patient, relentless, indifferent, crept back in. Today, Angkor Wat is on Cambodia's flag. Millions visit every year. It's still an active place of worship. But Angkor is more than a destination. It's a warning. Here's what it actually teaches us. Engineering can build greatness, but greatness has to be maintained. Cities can grow beyond what their environment can support, and climate doesn't destroy civilizations by itself. It exposes the weaknesses that were already there. Angkor didn't fall because of one thing. It fell because of everything at once. Drought, floods, political fracture, military pressure, and a water system too vast to repair when it needed the most help. Now think about Las Vegas, Phoenix, Los Angeles, Dubai. Cities built in deserts, dependent on aquifers being drained faster than they refill. Water systems engineered around climate patterns that are already shifting. Infrastructure that works perfectly, until it doesn't. The Khmer thought they had solved water. They thought their system was permanent. They were wrong. And when the collapse came, it didn't look like fire from the sky. It looked like a canal filling with sediment, a reservoir running low, a governor ignoring orders, families quietly moving somewhere easier to live. Slow, quiet, inevitable. That is the warning Angkor left behind. The Khmer Empire built a city so advanced it seemed impossible. They turned monsoons into power. They carved sacred mountains out of stone. They fed hundreds of thousands of people through one of the most sophisticated water systems the medieval world ever produced. And then the water stopped obeying them. Angkor didn't fall to one enemy. It declined because it built something so brilliant, so intricate, and so enormous that when everything shifted at once, no one could hold it together. The jungle came back, the towers stayed, and the lesson waited in silence for 6 centuries. If this made you rethink what collapse actually looks like, hit like. It helps this channel grow. Subscribe if you want more forgotten civilizations that modern cities should be studying. And drop a comment. Which empire should we cover next? And what do you think Angkor's real mistake was? The ambition to control nature, or the failure to maintain what they built? The greatest stories in history aren't about unstoppable empires. They're about the ones that believed they were. See you in the next chapter.